So, I just saw Empire of Sin with John
Yes.
Romero, and it looked really cool. And just tell us about the game. How did you, come up with it? What's it about?
So the game idea is from my wife Brenda, and she's had this idea for about 20 years, and she's just loved, this time period of the 20s, the Prohibition era, the larger-than-life characters, and because of her really long experience in RPG design, in like Jagged Alliance strategy design, and her love of XCOM and playing Civ for decades, it all just culminated in this design. And when she put it together, it just was a perfect game for Paradox because of it's based in history, and it has deep strategy, and it has a ton of details and a ton of interrelated systems that we call a system soup, and it makes it a really fun game that when a player starts, you can't just see through it to the end, because the game changes crazily as you're playing it, because characters have relationships and traits, and those change over time.
Sure. And so, what are some of the main gameplay elements of Empire of Sin?
Well, you play as, say, one of 14 gangsters, and you're playing against a bunch of other gangsters in Chicago, and they have already started their own rackets, and the rackets are like brothels and speakeasies and casinos and breweries and union skimming rackets and protection rackets. And so they've started establishing themselves, and you need to establish yourself, because the only way to win the game is to wipe out everybody else. So you will be creating allies, and they'll be allying against you, and each boss has different starting bonuses and abilities. For example, there's one boss that starts with nobody, like everyone's neutral to him, so he doesn't have any enemies when he starts, which is great. And like Capone, when he starts, he will ally automatically with any other Italian boss that's in the game at that time. So yeah, there's just a lot of variety in the game, and you get to choose like how long you play. If you want to play a quick game, you choose one neighborhood and one other boss to go against. And if you want a really long game, you pick many neighborhoods, many bosses, and you could go for like 10 hours.
Yeah, sure. And I saw the gameplay, and I noticed that it was very detailed, quite beautiful,
Thanks.
actually. And I wasn't born in the 1920s. I'm not from that time, but it looks pretty accurate. What kind of research did you guys do to develop it?
We spent at least 8 months of research just going through all the different layers of the game that we were going to kind of represent. So, like, say, the newspapers. The newspapers in the game is part of the nerd pillar, and that nerd pillar was like, well, how about this? We're going to have a newspaper for every month from 1920 to 1933. And if players decide that they want to read the newspaper at any time during the game, it's going to bring up a story about something in the world that happened then, something that happened in the United States, something that has happened because of what's happening in the game world, something that you've done in the game world that's important to put in the newspaper, and really just fill out this cool piece of info that you can just like, wow, this is cool. Next month, another edition comes out, something significant happens in the game. You just killed a boss, there's a special edition comes out, and it basically says what happened, So it's cool that there's like this thing that's paying attention to you and the things that you're doing, or what's happening in the game. In like the bosses that we chose are, half of them are real bosses that were around back then, and the other half are bosses that we created that helps to create like a really diverse cast of characters, so any player can kind of see themselves as somebody that they'd want to play in the game, So it's like, hey, that kind of looks like me. That's kind of where I'm from. I want to play that character. And then we have RPCs. We have a ton of RPCs, 60 RPCs in the game. These are recruitable player characters that all have backstories. They all have professions like, a doctor, a hitman, enforcer, a demolitionist, you name it. And you want these people to be part of your crew that you're building to take over Chicago, because they're the ones doing the fighting. So you're going to want to be getting the right people, and sometimes it takes getting the right RPC to introduce you to an even higher level RPC, and then have them introduce you to someone else. But of course, the loyalty has to build up enough to the point where they would actually even do that for you.
Sure. And I'll finish it off by asking you about some of your past works and how it, affected your game design here. Obviously, you're known for your work at id, Doom,
Yep.
Wolfenstein, later on Daikatana, and more recently even Sigil.
Yep.
So how has all those experiences culminated into making this title?
Well, I'm mostly doing a lot of production on the game. I'm doing all, sound and design and other stuff. So, having that much experience on a lot of big projects like that really helps to know how to run a big game like this. And Brenda's experience in all the 50 games that she's made have helped her design a really tight game, and how to run a design team and let them kind of go free in the different systems that we have, and let them fill out systems, and then she can kind of review and edit systems. So it's we do very different things on the game. She's totally design. I'm totally kind of management, in other parts of the game that need to be done. And it's really fun because we don't have a gigantic team. We have a nice small team of 22, 23 people, and that means that everybody's doing significant work.
And last but not least, when can people get their hands on it? What platforms? And,
So it's going to be out in spring of 2020, which is 100 years after Prohibition started, and it's going to be on 5 platforms: PC, Mac, Switch, Sony, and Microsoft.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking with us.
All
And
right.
if you want to hear more E3 news, check out TechRaptor's coverage hub, and we'll see you next time.
All right.